This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Oh boy, welcome to the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Hope you're having a blessed day wherever you're tuned in around the world, whether it's 95 FM, Pulse95Radio.com, our app, Sharjah Broadcasting Authority, or even if you're chilling at home watching us live on YouTube. Thank you very much for connecting, and what a show we have in store for you today. A couple of shout outs to those people who have jumped in the Instagram live already. Muhammad, Kulthum, Masoud, Terry, Abdu, Eve, Mustafa, Florin, Fatima, and Yassine, who are already jumping in on the Instagram live. Guys, stay tuned because this is what I have on the show today. Kanzy Eldafrawy is on the show, a jack of all trades. Now, one thing I like about this person is there's a very big part of the mental fitness side that we talk about a lot on the show in it. Winning over 17 national titles and 11 international professional squash tournaments. That's not the only reason why we're bringing it on here. We're bringing it on here because she has a lot to offer to the table on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international, local. Thank you very much for locking in with me on this hour. Kanzy Eldafrawy is on the show. Ooh, you hear the applause. You hear it. Kanzy, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for being present. And also, I really want to spend this hour with you to get to know all the incredible things you're doing.
Okay. 1 hour only. We only have 1 hour.
Listen.
Okay.
We might do a
try.
remix. We might do a remix. But that's how I do things here on the show. Kanzy, you've been playing squash since the age of 6. Why squash?
So I grew up in Egypt, and squash in Egypt is dominating. It's one of the most popular and successful sports. When I was young, my parents kind of put me in all sorts of sports, from swimming to gymnastics to basketball. But they really saw potential in squash. And it's very common for Egyptian parents to put their kids at a very young age to play squash, because it's actually the only sport in Egypt where you have really high chances of becoming not just a professional athlete, but a super successful professional athlete. So I actually hated squash, fun fact, when I was a kid.
That's why?
I thought it was so frustrating not being able to hit the ball, because it's not like tennis. I guess tennis is easier for you to hit the ball, but squash is, the ball doesn't really bounce.
Right.
So I really, really hated squash as a kid, and my parents just never give up on me. They saw something different. I don't know what. They saw something unique. They saw potential, and they just kept pushing me to do it. And when I was 8 years old, my mom took me to Germany for my first tournament, and I took second place. And the feeling of me being on that podium, holding the medal, and feeling like I'm actually good. I didn't know I was good, but that was the turning point of my career. When I was 8, I realized that I'm extremely passionate about the sport, and I have a lot of potential in it, so I'm actually going to take it seriously. And I went back home, and my life changed ever since.
When should one start playing squash? Now that you've reached the heights that you've reached, when do you recommend someone to start getting into competitive sports?
It's a really tough question, because it really depends on the person. But squash specifically is one of those sports where you cannot start at a late age. And by late, I mean 12 is probably the latest I've heard anyone successful made it. It's one of those sports where the techniques and there's so many things to learn, and you really need to start from a super young age, because if you start at 10 or 11, the basics of the game, it takes you a good 4 or 5 years to get there. So squash specifically, I would recommend 7 would be an amazing age to start.
And you said something there. You said family. Now your family got you into it. How was that growing up with the expectation of how Egypt's very competitive in squash and very good at it, and then with you being part of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was so much expectation. So there's always the good and bad, right? So you have, my parents giving me everything, my dad spending, a lot of money making me travel worldwide. I'm going to all these tournaments. I'm getting anything that I want. I'm getting, really good education as well. But in return, I really, really, really need to perform. So this was the stressful part growing up. It's like my parents gave me everything, but at the same time, it wasn't all fun and games. It was like every time I went to a match, they really expected me to perform really well and to win and to get to the first place. And it was kind of like, I felt ashamed if I didn't win because I was always worried about what they would think or how much pressure I had on me. So
well, with 70 national titles and 11 international professional squash tournaments, not that bad at all, huh?
owe it to my parents.
Well, that's a big thing. Now, the other thing is you have a vision of the UAE squash scene. Now, you've been able to come over here with all your experience and observe and see what the scene is like here. What is the scene like here in the UAE?
So it's very interesting because the UAE is one of those countries where squash is very accessible. If you go to any gym or even a lot of residential buildings or compounds, there's squash courts everywhere.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's, Dubai has over 200 nationalities. It's the land of expats. So you have, the interest is there. So many people from the UK, Pakistan, India, those people love squash. So in terms of resources, you have the resources and you have the interest. But then the hard part is that you don't have one spot where people go to or people can go and learn or people don't know who to contact. So in the UAE it's very common for people who like to play squash for them to call one or two friends and they just stick with those one or two people for for the year.
Yeah.
But you don't really have squash leagues, squash tournaments, even on a local level you have but very few. So there's no I would say there's no hub for squash in the UAE.
I was waiting for you to say that word, but you might be doing something about that.
Yes, exactly, which is what I've been working on for a couple of years ever since I moved here. So my vision in the UAE is not just to create a hub and a community, it's to also create a national team because I realized that Egypt has the most amazing squash players in the world and I've learned a lot growing up there and being part of the national team myself. And I always wanted to do something with squash that no one has ever done before. Building an academy, everyone has done academies before, but building a national team from scratch, that's different.
Nice.
So my goal here is to create a squash hub, squash community obviously, but to also attract the younger generation to be able to create that national team in a couple of years.
Fantastic aspirations. Right, guys, coming up next, can squash help you grow as an athlete, but can sport defer you from growing as a human? On the only place to be at 3, the halftime show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the halftime show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Kanzy Eldafrawi is in the building today and I'm picking her brain even during the break, guys, and you only know if you were watching on the Instagram live what we're talking about. We're talking a lot of juice, especially on I come from a family of squash players, and having an athlete in the building here with me now really kind of rekindles the feeling of the respect that I have for squash players. Right, okay, Kanzy, so question for you, and I know a lot of the times we try and bring out the best in sport. So can squash help you grow as an athlete? And if so, how?
Of course. I mean, not just as an athlete, as a person as well, but just speaking from an athletic point of view, the amount of discipline that you have to go through, the amount of toughness that you have to go through, the amount of, because it's a very individualistic sport, right? So when you're on the court, it's literally just, it's you and your brain. You don't have anyone else to support you. You don't have any team members. You don't have any teammates. So as an athlete, you really, really learn to depend on yourself and to trust yourself, because if you mess up, you're the only one who's going to take the blame.
Is there a strong sense of accountability?
Of course, exactly, yeah. And of course, I mean, squash as a person has really taught me to be extremely disciplined and extremely patient as well. And you really grow that sense of confidence as a person as well, because when you're on the court, the more confident you are, the better chances you are at playing better, at winning, at feeling great. And that all reflects on your character as a person outside of the squash court as well.
And that's a good point, because sport can give you the pros and the cons. What are the cons of that, especially when you're trying to grow as a human?
I would say the cons are the amount of sacrifices you'd have to make. It's like being a professional athlete is basically you being married to the sport. So I remember in my professional days, I used to eat, breathe, and sleep squash. It was all I was doing day and night. And it's really easy to get in that obsessive lifestyle in terms of you dig yourself deeper in the hole. So you wake up and I go train, and then I do fitness, and then I come back home, and then in my free time instead of doing something normal, I end up watching my matches and analyzing, or watching other people's matches to analyze, and then I call my coaches and I ask them, okay, what to do with the strategy. And it's really easy to get sucked into like that obsessive lifestyle of the sport, and then you end up forgetting who you are other than an athlete. You completely forget who you are.
How does that affect your friends?
For me, I'm a very social person. Friends for me are extremely important. I think they're a big support system. So I always made sure that I give enough room for my friends in my life. But in general, in my professional athletic career, I had to sacrifice a lot of things, like my best friend's wedding or engagement parties or birthdays or things like that, because again, you are so dedicated to a specific schedule and every day counts. And you're talking worldwide. This is not a local. You're not playing for college. You're talking, if I win this tournament, I'm gonna break the top 20s. If I beat this person, I'm gonna break the top 10s. So it's such a serious lifestyle that nothing comes first. Like, squash is your priority, and no matter who's getting married or whose birthday is it or what's happening in the world, I just don't care.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, mental fitness is something which many are looking into now more and more as the game changer. What do you do to enhance your mental health?
So this is very interesting because I grew up in Egypt and never was exposed to mental health whatsoever. Every time I went into a match, it was more like, toughen up, you got this, you have to win. People put so much pressure on me and when I say people, it's like family and coaches and even friends. You have to win, you have to beat this person, and all the advice that I had was toughen up, be stronger, like fight more. But no one ever taught me anything about visualization or meditation, or is my head really in a good space, or how do I separate my personal issues with, how do I separate what I'm going through as a person and then go in and perform as an athlete. So this was always a struggle growing up, but I never noticed it because I was never exposed to mental health until I went to study in university in the US, and I was introduced to a sports psychologist for the team. I had no idea what a sports psychologist was. And I was blown away from from instead of being like, toughen up, you have to win, it's more like, okay, how do you feel today? I care about your feelings. This is how I can help you. Now you're in a good mental state to actually perform and win.
And I was going to ask you, has that changed your approach on being a parent, coaching, and the way you would encourage your kids to get into sport?
Of course. I mean, there's a fine line between being too lenient and being extremely strict that you just put so much pressure on your kid. I don't think parents should be lenient because there's some sort of reward they want out of their children, and you need to make your children feel like, okay, this is important. It's not like if I win or lose, it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter to the extent that your world is gonna end if you lose the match. So absolutely. I just think there's always that balance between both.
Interesting. That's why you're in the coaching scene as well now.
Yes.
Fantastic. Right. Okay, we're going to take a break. I'm going to play some Burna Boy for you guys because I know my regular listeners love listening to Burna Boy. So we're going to take a break, listen to that, and we'll be right back after this break. Enjoy, guys.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Thank you very much for tuning in today. And guys, don't worry. I know I've had a couple of connection problems with my Instagram Live, but we are back on now. And if you do miss the show, remember you can catch the podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or Anghami, or even if you prefer a visual, thanks to Super Mario and Gabby. They get the episodes up on YouTube for you to be able to watch it at the comfort of your own home in your own time. Kanzy, what's up?
What's up?
Kanzy, you have many roles, okay? Not just squash. But how do you differentiate between the role of an athlete, the role of a mentor, and the role of a coach?
Super tough question. You should have emailed me that so I can prepare.
Just tell me as it is. I know it's going to be great.
No, I'm kidding. So as an athlete, of course, as I told you, like there's the sense of discipline, the sense of everything is very individualistic, and you really grow that sense of responsibility as an athlete because you do everything for yourself. You win for yourself. If you skip training, you're not skipping for anyone. You're skipping for yourself. So as an athlete, there's just a completely different sense of responsibility that you have that a regular person wouldn't necessarily have at the same level. As a mentor, I always like to mentor people based on my experiences and based on what I've been through as a person. So I don't necessarily, even as a coach, like both of them, I don't necessarily coach people based on, the traditional way of coaching or the things that any coach is supposed to say, but mostly what I've been through as a person. I kind of feel what the players are experiencing, so I try to give them advice based on my personal experience and what I've been through rather than what generally people tell them.
Yeah. Something you said there that made me think, and I didn't have this question down, but I'm going to ask it now. Because squash is an individual sport, has that changed the way you coach?
In what way? What do you mean?
When you coach people now, in terms of not just in sport, but in life, has that changed your approach? For example, if you were a champion in a team sport, would that change your philosophy of how to coach people?
100%. I think because as I said, it's very individualistic. Every person that I coach has extremely different needs, extremely different things to work on, and if it's not in the sport, it's in their mental game, and if it's not in their mental game, it's in their fitness level. So it's like you really have to adapt. So for example, if I'm a coach for a team, I'm gonna give advice to the whole team. Like if you're, as a soccer coach, when you give advice, you're gonna give advice to the whole team. As a general advice, but that advice might not resonate on a personal level to each person. So that's what squash has taught me, is that you really have to dig deep into what your athlete is going through, what they really need on a personal level, and how you can give them advice that will, specifically be helpful to them.
Absolutely. And so, in other words, you'd basically give them objectives individually, but collectively you'd give them general advice.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay. And what's it like being a champion at such a young age?
It was honestly very rewarding. It helped me a lot in creating my confidence, growing and developing my confidence. Specifically of the fact that any tournament I won, or any time, I broke or I beat someone that I wasn't supposed to beat, the PR attention and the media attention that I received from a very young age was always overwhelming. Specifically growing up in Egypt, whereas whether it's like newspapers or radios or whatever it was, so it was it's overwhelming, but in a very nice way. Like a lot of the times I remember, because in squash usually when you win a match you go outside and you make a speech, or when you win a tournament you go outside and you make a speech. So I always remembered when I was, a couple of points away from winning, I would already think about the speech that I'm going to make when I won.
Interesting.
So it's very rewarding. It's extremely rewarding. You really feel that sense of accomplishment. Like your training has paid off. You connect with yourself and you trust yourself from a completely deeper level.
And part of being a champion is obviously facing adversity and also facing defeat. Has that taught you as much as winning the tournament? And if so, what?
It's taught me a lot more than winning. When I won, let's say I'm in a final and I win the match, I'm gonna finish the match and go celebrate. The match is completely past me. I'm never gonna watch it. I'm never gonna think about it because I won. There's nothing for me to watch. But when I lose the match, I go back and I really reflect on everything that I've done and what I've done wrong, and not just in the match, but in the way I've prepared for it as well. So it kind of like makes me, it's like a wake-up call, and you start digging into your training and the way what did I do wrong, and it's completely different, and you really you become a lot stronger from losses than wins.
When does the preparation start?
It's a really tough question. I mean, preparation is ongoing, right? You prepare constantly, and the season is also, it runs all year round. So it's not like you have a off season and on season. It's really all year round. But I would say for me, the mental preparation is always what was more intense 2 weeks before the tournament, where I really started to mentally prepare for it rather than focusing on how hard I'm training.
Excellent. All right, guys, I told you it was going to be good. We're going to be right back after the break. We just have the Adhan coming up. So what I'm going to do, go get yourself a tea, get yourself a nice little beverage, and come back right after the break on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Couldn't help but play this background because we were talking some fight talk just in the break. If you weren't tuned in on the Instagram live, you would have seen me and Kanzy going at it, not in a bad way, but on the same team, trying to find answers, and we're getting there now. And I thought I'd just share this little 15 seconds with you guys to show you that a lot of good stuff happens behind the scenes. But right, okay, Kanzy. Now that we got that out of my belly. Okay, so couple of things. I want to ask you something actually, Kanzy, because you're in the mental side of the game as well as the physical. How do you reset?
So, it's kind of like, it's a hard question, but if I were to say one thing, it's to really learn to put everything behind me and to start fresh, as if nothing happened. So instead of mourning on what happened and, trying to improve it, to try to completely disconnect as if it never happened and start from scratch.
Nice. I like the word disconnect. I like the word detach as well. That's pretty cool.
Synonyms.
Yeah, man. You know that. All right. You got a lot of great things happening out there, and I got to take my hat off to you now and say, well done on such a great job of what you're doing, and also trying to set not just, a trend, but a trail for the upcoming youth in the squash scene to be able to evolve and develop, and that is so important for the future of the UAE squash scene. Where can we follow you?
So on Instagram, my name is Kanzy Daf, KanzyDaf. My website is theflyingdaf.com. And I'm extremely responsive on either. So and on my website, there's a form where you can just send me a message and ask whatever you want about the game, or feel free to send me a message on Instagram, or even my email is on my Instagram page, so you can reach out there.
Fantastic.
And I'm not one of those people who ignores messages.
Yeah.
I actually respond.
And that's good. And actually, some big news coming soon, which you will have on your social media pages, so you should tune in, because I'm just going to give you a hint.
No.
There's an academy that's going to be opening up in the UAE. And if you want to find out more, you got to head over to her social media pages, and she will be announcing that on there. But you have to stay close to it, like how close I am to the microphone right now. Not that the whole of the UAE can hear, but you have to stay close and find out about her great information, because she's got some wicked things coming up for that. Kanzy, that is full time on the halftime show. How's the experience been for you?
Nice. I like that. Did you just make that up?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good.
That is full time on the halftime show. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. I
and
really
joining us.
appreciate it.
It was awesome. And remember, guys, you can catch it every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 3 to 4, usual times. And if you do miss the show, don't worry. Head over to the YouTube channel. Super Mario and Gabby are going to put the episodes up there, ad and commercial free. Thank you very much for spending the hour with me. I'm out. Kanzy, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All the best, people. Peace.
If you liked this episode of The Halftime Show, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.